Steve Caballero cracked skateboarding's rotation code in 1981, but his trick pushed ramps past their limits, forcing Chris Miller to build a new blueprint just to keep up. Suddenly, contests exploded, fame followed, and the rules changed until one skater decided vert ramps were not big enough, and the sport would never shrink back. So how did a handful of innovators force the world to redesign skateboarding itself? At Winchester Skate Park in 1981, Steve Caballero stood at the lip, board in hand, facing an untested line. He rolled in fakie, snapped the tail, and spun a full 360, no hands, no grab, just pure rotation. The Caballerial was born. This trick, a fakie 360 ollie over the coping, demanded balance and commitment. Caballero's back foot popped the tail while his front foot guided the board through the spin, all while his body unwound midair. Landing required knees tucked for shock absorption and a steady rollaway, still riding fakie. Bones Brigade teammates watched as he repeated the motion session after session at Winchester and later at Marina del Rey. There were bails, plenty of them, but Caballero's approach was relentless. He described the process, saying he would practice a trick for hours, sometimes days, until it felt like breathing. The Caballerial didn't just add a rotation, it reset what was possible. Until then, vert tricks relied on grabs or hand plants for control. Caballero's pure ollie-based spin opened a new axis, one that let skaters leave the wall and return with speed, style, and flow. Soon, Lance Mountain and Neil Blender adapted it, creating the half cab, a halfway version that took the streets by storm. But in 1981, the full Caballerial was a test of both nerve and ramp. Early 80s ramps, often cobbled together from plywood and 2x4s, were not built for repeated high-impact spins. Contest organizers and ramp builders started to notice as Caballero's trick spread, first in Bones Brigade sessions, then in Thrasher photo spreads. Skaters everywhere tried to match the rotation, only to find that inconsistent ramp transitions made the landing unpredictable. The Caballerial became a measuring stick. If you could land one, you had mastered both the trick and the terrain. But as more skaters chased the feeling, the pressure grew for ramps that could handle the new demands. The era of improvisation was ending. Caballero's obsession with rotation had set a new standard, one that would force the entire scene to rethink how ramps were built and how far skateboarding could go. Chris Miller arrived on the vert scene as the demand for bigger, more reliable ramps reached a breaking point. Early contest half pipes built in backyards or parking lots varied wildly. Some had steep transitions, others barely reached true vertical. Skaters could never be sure if a ramp would let them fly or send them tumbling. Miller, known for his speed and carving lines, saw that progress needed a common ground. He started working with ramp builders and contest organizers, pushing for clear specs, walls between 12 and 14 feet high, a fixed transition radius that matched the arc of a perfect carve, and a flat bottom wide enough for high-speed approaches. Blueprints from the mid-1980s began circulating among National Skateboard Association events. Ramps were measured before finals. Organizers ran tape measures from coping to flat, checking for the promised height. These dimensions were not just numbers on paper. They meant that a skater could trust the ramp to deliver the same pop, the same speed every time. Consistency became the new foundation for progression. Miller's influence reached beyond his own runs. Ramp builders like Dave Swift remember Miller insisting on precise transitions, sometimes rebuilding sections overnight to get the curve just right. National Skateboard Association head scorer Bob Danicki recalls Miller's input on set run judging, which rewarded amplitude and flow over chaotic jam sessions. The result was an environment where skaters could push their limits without second-guessing the terrain. Contest crowds grew as riders started soaring higher, knowing the ramp would hold up. By 1987, the vert ramp at Del Mar followed Miller's specs almost to the inch, 14 feet tall, an 11-foot transition taped off before every heat. The spectacle of reliable, repeatable airtime drew sponsors and media, setting the stage for a new era of vert competition. Miller's quiet precision, documented in contest logs and blueprints, built the launch pad for the drama and fame that would follow. Under the glare of arena lights, Christian Hosoi soared above the coping, knees tucked, board grip tight, arms outstretched in a pose that looked more like performance than a contest run. The Christ Air wasn't just a trick, it was an exclamation point, a statement that vert skating had become something bigger than the sum of its technical parts. In 1986, finals at Del Mar and Upland drew crowds that packed the bleachers and spilled onto the decks. Fans pressed against chain link fences, straining for a glimpse as Hosoi launched 10 feet out, freezing midair in that signature crucifixion pose, then dropping back to earth as the crowd erupted. Television cameras started showing up at NSA events, capturing the spectacle for late-night highlight reels and MTV specials. In one broadcast, a commentator said, "Hosoi doesn't just skate, he flies." That soundbite echoed through the industry, and suddenly, Vert wasn't just for insiders. It was headline entertainment. Sponsors took notice. Vision Streetwear, already selling thousands of Hosoi Hammerhead decks each month, doubled their orders after every televised final. Board sales charts from 1986 to 1988 show Hosoi models outselling nearly every other pro, with Vision reporting year-over-year revenue spikes that ran into the millions. Prize purses at major contests jumped from $5,000 to over $10,000 in just 2 seasons as shoe companies and soda brands fought for a patch of ramp real estate. The crowds kept growing. Del Mar's 1987 Vert Finals drew more than 10,000 spectators, a number that would have seemed impossible just a few years earlier. With every Christ air, every moment of showmanship, Hosoi fed a cultural fever that turned skateboarding into a mainstream phenomenon. The appetite for bigger tricks, bigger ramps, and bigger paydays was set. The door opened for the next wave of ambition. That wave would soon push the limits of what a ramp or a human could do. Steel beams rose against the sky at Juyongguan Pass, just beyond Beijing. Construction crews worked day and night, assembling a structure that dwarfed anything skateboarding had ever seen. The mega ramp for Danny Wei's Great Wall attempt stretched over 120 feet high, with a gap of nearly 65 feet yawning between the launch and landing. Reinforced steel, custom skate-light surfaces, and scaffolding borrowed from stadium engineers, every inch calculated for speed and survival. And the ramp's roll-in dropped at a steep angle designed to push a skater past 45 miles per hour before takeoff. And there were no blueprints for a stunt like this, only years of trial and error on prototypes in California deserts and private compounds. Wei arrived in China weeks before the jump, overseeing final tweaks. He and ramp designer JT Tyson walked the site, running through what ifs, wind direction, temperature, and the way the stone courtyard below might affect the landing. There was no room for error. Wei rehearsed each step, visualizing the drop, the pop, the arc across the ancient wall. On the night before the attempt, disaster struck. During a practice run, Wei landed awkwardly and fractured his left foot. Medics taped him up. He could barely walk, but there was no thought of stopping. He later said that figuring out how to skate on this scale meant facing fear in a way he never had before. Thousands gathered at the wall, cameras rolling. Wei climbed the tower, strapped on his helmet, and dropped in. The board rattled over the roll-in, wind pressing against his chest. At the lip, he launched, flying 65 feet across the gap, clearing the wall, and landing with a thud that echoed through the valley. He rolled away, pain shooting up his leg, but the crowd erupted. He did not just land the gap once, he went back up and did it 3 more times, each jump a defiance of gravity and doubt. The feat set a new world record and redefined what skateboarding could be. In Wei's own words, limits are just starting points. If you build it big enough, there is no telling how far you can go. Every leap in skateboarding's evolution sets a new standard and then dares the next generation to break it. Today's mega ramps and viral tricks are proof. Boundaries exist only until someone rides past them. Progress doesn't pause, and the next impossible moment is already in motion. Drop your thoughts below.